Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be working on a Halloween costume for myself, and for that I'm going to be diving into my stash of vintage patterns to make a vintage witch. So today we're going to be using one of the patterns I was able to pick up earlier this year. It's McCall's 4987, and I was able to pick this pattern up on auction online. I managed to get the top bid, and when I got this, I pulled it out of the package and found out it was in mint condition, factory folded, beautiful and pristine. So naturally, I've decided to open it all up, cut it up, and use it, because that's what patterns are for. In all seriousness, I'm so excited. I really love getting these mint condition patterns and knowing that I get to make them and use them for what the pattern makers had intended them for. I do have some Halloween fabric in my stash already, this fabulous polka dot patterns, and then jack-o'-lanterns, owls, and cats. Cute and spooky, and I think it's going to be great. I actually picked this pattern up, these patterns up last year, and just didn't get around to making myself anything. I was very busy making costumes for everyone else. So I'm pretty excited to get to make something for myself this year. And I think this pattern is going to work really well because it appears as though there's an underdress and then there's a mock jacket over the top. So it's a pattern that is going to work really well with two different fabrics, and that is exactly what we are going to do. For the inner dress of this, we're going to be using the polka dots. And then for the outer dress, that coat-like, we're going to be using the cats, jack-o'-lanterns, and owls fabric. In this, it shows that the belt is supposed to be matching the overdress, but I didn't have quite enough of the original fabric, so we're going to do a contrasting belt, and I actually think it's going to work really nicely because it's going to bring those polka dots back out to the front of the dress as well. So 1960s cutesy, spooky witch, and I think it's going to be smashing. Let's get started, guys. Let's get stitching. All right, guys, I have my handy dandy instructions here in front of me. I have my pieces for the first few steps laid out, and we're going to start marking things up. Now, the first things the pattern instructions want us to do is get the darts marked and stitched in, and then to complete the front bodice before moving to the darts and the completion of the back bodice. Just for continuity's sake and to make things a little bit easier, I think I'm going to get all of the darts completed and then move on to the steps of construction for the whole bodice, just because it makes more sense in my brain to do it that way. So let's get started. All right, my dears, we have all of the darts stitched into the bodice. I have done both the bodice front as well as the bodice back darts, and they are looking great just as they are. So we do need to move along to our inset area. And in the pattern, there is a little V notch in the front area. It is optional, but I would like to try and do it. I do think it looks nice. It is a little bit different than a placket I have sewn in the past, though I think it should be similar in the way we complete that. So we're going to go ahead and give that a go. That means we're going to need to fold along this line here for the pattern piece. As the instructions indicate, stitch down this line, up this line. It says to go one stitch past, and then slash down this line, and then flip the piece so that it is the proper side of the material standing out, and that should fold that little V notch into the dress, creating a lovely seamless top. We're going to give it a go. All have finished putting the darts into our bodice. We've got the darts put into the bodice front, as well as the darts for the bodice back. We did go ahead and complete the inset for the front of the bodice, and we did that small placket opening here, so it'll have a kind of a cute little dip in the front. And now what we need to do is put this inset into the front of the bodice. And by doing that, we'll stabilize the front of the bodice, and that will give us a stable piece to put the interfacing for the neckline to. So we are going to go ahead and get our materials facing the right way, right sides together, matching up. Now, because we have added the darts to the bodice, remember the bodice is going to have kind of a curve, so don't be afraid to use your pins. You want to make sure that you maintain that curve, because that's going to create a nice shape around the body. Starting here at the bottom, and we're going to pin, pin, pin. Going to turn out. Ooh, I think it's going to look really great. Let's get it stitched together. All right, we have the bodice front and bodice back put together, which means it is time for the interfacing. And now the interfacing is two pieces. It's a back neck and then it is a front panel. And as you can see here, we're going to be bringing it all the way around and stitching it to that front placket piece, and then folding it over, which is going to conceal the darts in the front of the bodice as well. So it's going to work pretty darn well to kind of clean everything on the interior of the bodice up and make it look really, really nice. So let's get that put together. All right. Now we are ready. We've got the interfacing put in. I have pressed the edges up toward the facing. I have also clipped the neck so that it will lay nicely once everything has been folded over. And now we need to do our understitching. So what that means is we are actually going to be stitching along the line right here on the interfacing, and it will not be going through because we're just going through these two layers. That way, when I pull this back, it's going to get tucked back. Do you see how it's going to get tucked back perfectly? It won't ever have a possibility of rolling up because this interfacing is going to be tacked to this interior seam here. And so it'll be tight. So even if I were to wash this, throw it in the dryer, etc., this is never going to roll up and pop out of the dress. So we're going to go along and just stitch the interfacing to this back hem here, or this back seam here. I just want to make sure I've got everything pulled around nice and tight. And I kind of like to pull the material as I go, making sure that this has been really flattened and making sure I've always got this material under here to the back toward the facing. And this is a nice close stitch. All right, and there it is. Understitching completed, and it's going to lay perfectly flat. So I'm going to give this a nice firm pressing, and then we can flip the entire thing inside out, or I guess I should say right side out. All right, my dears, we have our bodice put together, we have our sleeves completed, we have our interfacing in, and we've got it top stitch, or we've got understitching completed here. This is done. We did leave the side open here for our zipper. So what we need to do next is put the skirt together and make the belt. Now this is the material that I cut out for the belt, and this is the pattern here. And I do have these adjustable slide buckles, but I wasn't sure if this was quite what I wanted. it is what I've got in the drawer, so we'll see. The other thing that I did find was I have this old, big, chunky pleather belt, and it would be roughly the size of the belt that they're anticipating that you will use once you've got your seam allowance out. And so I am considering just using this or stitching this material underneath and then sliding this belt into it so that it's covered with the polka dots, because this will have a lot of really good structure rather than just having the fabric. This is a pleather, and so I would be kind of set and good to go. And then the contrasting black solid black buckle I think would work well. So I do have some thinking to do, and if I feel like this won't work to slide the material on, of course, I've got this here and I do have those other slide buckles. So I'm going to set that aside and do the belt last, because it is also something that I could just wear the plain black belt with as well. And that means the only thing we have left to do is to put our skirt together and put our zipper in. So this particular skirt is pretty simple. It is a little bit more full, 1959 to 1960s. We're in that kind of transitional period of not super full skirts moving into skirts that are a bit more full. So this one is going to have some shaping to it. It is going to have a triangle shape to it, as you can see here in the front. However, it is going to still have some pleating here, which is going to add a little bit of volume around the hip area. So let's go ahead, get everything kind of set up, lined up. We'll go ahead and get our pleats marked and get those taken in, and then we'll go ahead and get each piece put together. Then we can put the skirt onto our bodice, and we are almost set to go. All right, my dears, we've got our bodice and our skirt put together. I did, because I had a little bit of extra fabric, go ahead and add a pocket to the non-zipper side of our skirt, which means all we really need to do now is go ahead and get the bodice put onto the skirt. All right, guys, let's go ahead and go back over the make for this week. This is a McCall's pattern. It's pattern 4987. And I am absolutely thrilled with how my vintage witch turned out. I think it's very cute and very period. You know, it has that lovely cute vintage feel, and yet it also has a really nice witchy feel to it too, because of the way the insets for this dress were made. Now, things that I changed for this pattern. The sleeves, here I did go ahead and use the binding that was made for the sleeves. It was supposed to be folded all the way in. I thought it would be a nice little addition to bring the polka dots over to the sleeves as well. I did go ahead and add piping all the way down the front and along the bottom of the skirt as well, to really give a nice clear definition between the polka dotted fabric and our jack-o'-lanterns, cats, and owls fabric. At first I thought that they were going to be really great together, and I think overall they are, but unfortunately when I finished the dress before I added this, it felt like there wasn't quite enough contrast between the two fabrics, and it looked very muddled. So this is a basic ribbon. I top stitched it in place, and I think it really finishes the whole dress off. I did choose to leave the buttons off of this dress just because it already has a very busy print for the outer dress. And I did buy buttons, but I felt like you really couldn't see them. And so it seemed like a waste for this particular outfit. I do think I will make this again, and I would love to make it in a non-holiday dress. Maybe make this really cute trench coat pattern because it really went together very beautifully. The darts I feel like are in really good placement. I didn't have to change any of those. And overall things fit really nicely. I think the only thing that didn't quite fit that I did have to kind of finagle was the skirt. There were 2 pleats in the front, 2 pleats in the back, and they just didn't hit me quite right. It kind of made my hips look a little bit funky, and so I did go ahead and go just with a basic gather on the skirt. But because this isn't an overly full skirt at the waistline, I think it worked nicely. It's not overwhelming. It still fits in with the whole theme of the dress. I did opt to go with a belt I already have for this, and all I did was take the belt pattern out of the fabric that we had already cut out. I zipped it up closed, and then I slid it over the top of an existing belt so that the interior of the belt would have structure, and I think it worked like a charm. I'm really glad that I did it. And honestly, I think if I have another dress like this where the belt is roughly the same size, I could easily make this interchangeable where I slide the material off to match one dress and slide the material on to match another, which is kind of a great little gimmick to have in your closet. Overall, I am absolutely thrilled with my Halloween costume, and I can't wait to wear it this year at our Halloween party. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you like vintage videos, vintage patterns, and costuming videos, please hit that like and subscribe. And if you have any questions or any thoughts or requests, please leave them in the comments down below. I would love to have you here along with me on my journey. Thank you guys. See you next week.